Alicia, how would you handle a sexist, misogynist therapist who says the solution is for you to be more like a traditional housewife?
I would get up and walk out of their office.
Less violent than I was anticipating, but probably a healthier solution. Mended light. Welcome to Crap Therapists Say, where we ask you in our community what is the worst advice you've ever gotten from a therapist, and then we see if we can patch things up between you and just the whole notion of therapy. From one therapist to the masses, I'm so sorry. So in this video, we've got a series of people who responded with some misogynistic, sexist bullcrap. Yay! So let's just dive in.
So, this question that was submitted, that since I stayed at home, I should cater to my husband's every whim and anticipate his needs and fulfill them before he can ask. Her exact wording was, he should be able to come home, sit down, and not have to move for the rest of the night, not even to get himself a glass of water, because you should have already known he needed it and gotten it for him.
Okay,
This is hilarious.
Before I share my thoughts as a therapist, I just want to hear your thoughts as a woman. Because a woman therapist said this.
Yeah, so so predominantly having personality traits that are seen as more masculine, right? Mm-hmm. And you have personality traits that are seen as more feminine.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you come off as feminine and I come off as masculine.
No, but people get to know us and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friends think it's hilarious because we have complete gender role reversals going on. If something needs to be fixed, I fix it. If someone needs to be heard, you hear them. We are both growing in our capacities in different areas.
Yes, we are.
You know, if there's a house problem, a car problem, a business problem, like I take care of it.
If there's a person problem, I take care of it.
Yeah. And so to place that level of judgment on someone's gender, having grown up, and I would say in the culture I've grown up in, it isn't particularly stifling to women.
No.
There are definitely countries I've traveled in that are far more stifling. But to have grown up in a culture where I heard all sorts of shoulds and supposed tos, some of them from my own parents that believe that I am too masculine and have given me books on how to be less me, and having to confront that, right? To help me, having to confront that in a healthy way and say, hey, no, this is who I am and these are my strengths and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But once again, you have this person who is in a position of authority. You came to them for help and they are saying and doing not helpful things. Mm-mm.
As a therapist, I look at this and I think you've got no right to impose your values or beliefs on the person in front of you. With that in mind, I want to explore a little bit of space when ideologies collide, from my favorite show ever, Firefly. In this episode of this futuristic show, 500 years in the future, there's a crew, they're in space, they pull heists, and then sometimes they're the good guys. That's the show. But the captain has...
Space cowboys.
They're space cowboys. They're space outlaws, and the captain has accidentally married this really wholesome, virtuous, traditional Christian woman. She asked him to dance, he danced with her, and then they're married. That's what happened. Okay? And he's trying to like let her off easy, and this is what happened.
Because he doesn't want to be married? I'm so confused.
Because he just met her, and he wasn't planning on being married. It was just suddenly...
But by dancing they got married? Like he didn't know he got married?
It was a whole, this one wasn't a heist. They helped this group of Christian people, and then the woman came and she gave him wine to drink and put a wreath on his head, and then invited him to dance, and they danced, and according to the village traditions,
I
married.
see.
And he thought he was just at a bonfire and a pretty girl asked him to dance.
Got it.
It was a cultural misunderstanding.
It was a cultural misunderstanding. They did some sort of ritual that then meant to that community they were married. He had no idea.
Right. So she's now stowed away on the ship, and everyone on the ship is like, you can't sleep with her. And he's like, I'm not going to sleep with her. This was not a marriage that I ever chose. And the pilot and the pilot's wife, who is the pilot is like me, and the wife is like you, come in.
Yeah.
And this is the exchange.
Okay. And now I'll make sense. I'm excited about watching the clip.
Thank you.
Something smells good.
Having yourself a little supper, Captain?
Well, Saffron insisted on, I didn't want to make her feel it's damn tasty.
Is there any more where that came from?
I didn't think to make enough for your friends. But everything's laid out if you'd like to cook for your husband.
Yeah. Isn't she quaint? I'm just not hungry.
So, are you enjoying your own new buy a little slave girl?
She wanted to make me dinner. At least she's not crying.
I might. Did she really make a fresh bow? Quaint.
Remember that sex we were planning to have ever again?
You're all making a big deal. I would appreciate it if one person on this boat would not assume that I'm an evil, lecherous hump.
Nobody's saying that, sir.
Yeah, we're pretty much just giving each other significant glances and laughing incessantly. Is that cider? Brother Stroke? Yum. I'll get you a refill, hon.
That's for me to do.
You weren't lying about your cooking. If I hadn't already eaten.
You don't want to finish?
No, I have captainy things to do, but truthfully, that's a fine meal. Thank you.
Do you need anything else?
No. You just have something to eat yourself, and I'm gonna go, Captain.
If you're done with supper, would you like me to wash your feet?
The first time I saw this, him looking at her and then looking at his friends and then just leaving without responding, I've watched it on repeat like 5 times. It made me laugh so hard. Okay, there's some things we saw in this clip that I want to address in just a moment. But first, we have one more crap that a therapist said, and then we'll bring it all together.
So I was living with a boyfriend for the first time and was experiencing some conflict because of the dichotomy between traditional gender roles and how I really wanted to build our dynamic as a couple. As I found out, my therapist was extremely conservative and yelled at me, "Well, why don't you just be traditional? That's the way it's meant to be."
The therapists in both of these cases are breaking a few of the cardinal rules of therapy, the rules of ethics by which we are all bound. First is telling a client what to do, shooting on the client. A lot of people go to therapy thinking, well, the therapist will set me straight and tell me what to do. It's actually not what good therapy is. Because if a therapist tells you what to do, that's coming from where they're coming from, not coming from where you're coming from. It's all about their values, right? Which is the second thing, we don't impose our values on people. The whole purpose of therapy is to give you tools that you may not have otherwise had. It's to help you explore avenues that you may not have otherwise explored, or think things all the way through in ways that you're struggling to do by yourself.
Well, and I've learned all these rules and ethics of therapy from being in a relationship with you. Like those aren't things that I necessarily knew before. So when you explained this to me, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And your average person isn't going to necessarily know that. And you said something interesting of I absolutely might have someone, sitting across from me that has drastically different values than I do. And if I cognitively know I can't support them in their values, then I need to refer them to another therapist.
Right.
You're not expected to just be superhuman and completely set your biases aside. You as a therapist need to be aware of your own biases.
Yes, I had one of my professors in school said, no therapist is truly objective, and when you believe you're objective, you're blinding yourself to how your biases are seeping in.
Yeah.
Far better to be upfront about who you are and what you value, and then see if the client wants to work with you. So to this point, the very first lesbian couple I worked with, I was their third therapist, and the 2 therapists they'd seen before were equally atrocious in opposite directions. And I share this story with their permission without any identifying information, but the couple, one of them came from a deeply traditionally religious background, the other did not. The one who did was having a hard time reconciling the beliefs they were raised with the love they had for the person next to them. So they went to one therapist, and that therapist told them, well, the problem is you're living in sin. You need to break up and repent.
And that did nothing.
That's not therapy.
Yeah.
Then they went to another therapist, And that therapist said, the problem is your oppressive religion. You just need to leave it behind and love your partner. Depending on who you are, you might find one or the other of those approaches to be more favorable, but if so, that's because of what you value. The fact is, as a therapist, I found those both equally abhorrent, because who a person loves and what or how they believe is something deeply personal to them. It is not for a therapist to dictate or tell them what to do. Far better to understand their values, their conflicts, and to ask them questions that get them thinking about what they really want, what they really believe, and let the chips fall where they may with what they choose.
Because the thing that neither of those therapists did was ask them about their journey and help them explore their options. They said, well, here's the problem.
Yes. And that is some real crap therapy.
What do I pay you for?
So back to the traditional gender roles thing.
Yeah.
It's not about what works for me as a therapist should work for everybody. It's about what do you value and who you are.
So looping back, because these questions are about romantic relationships, right? But it's true on a friendship level, just not as closely, right? Or a parent-child level, or in any relationship. But the question is, how do you have a healthy, successful, happy marriage or partnership with someone? And I would say that's about knowing your needs, and being able to communicate your needs, and knowing your partner's needs, and then being able to communicate their needs, and then building a bridge between the two.
Well, and making sure those things line up.
Right. Because we have a close couple friend of ours that have a very traditional marriage based on very traditional gender roles.
Yeah.
You know, she does serve his food and put it on a plate and take it to him. She does get his glass of water, you know.
He goes to work, comes home. Once he's home, it's not like he's absent, but she
takes care of him.
She takes care of him.
She takes care of him.
He provides, she takes care of the home.
Yeah, and that works for both of them.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic that they enjoy.
It would be a mistake to call it oppressive.
Yeah.
Because it's what they both choose and what they both want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And while we're close friends with them, our relationship has never looked like that.
No.
And it wouldn't ever look like that, because that doesn't fit either one of our needs.
Right. And so in therapy, again, what works for the person in front of you? Mm-hmm. And in life, how do we honor the journeys and the values and the choices of the people around us? Because their decisions aren't going to be our decisions. And we need to have the humility to say, just because something works for me doesn't mean it's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It means this is the lane I'm comfortable in.
Well, and I don't want to get lost on a tangent here, but I often say that we apply moral judgments to non-moral questions.
Yeah.
And as far
this
as
is right and wrong.
Right. And the conversation about gender roles and the right and wrong of gender roles, people often turn that into a moral question in a way that I believe those two therapists did, when it is not a moral question.
Right.
It is what works for you and your needs as a person, because who you are and how you show up in the world is wonderful and beautiful, and the way that becomes more wonderful and beautiful is when you can do it in a partnership that supports you.
Yeah. So for Wash and Zoe, the couple in Firefly that were not traditional, that dynamic works for them. And Saffron could be with somebody who's more traditional, and that relationship would work for her. I mean, if you've seen the episode, there's some other things. But who Saffron presents herself to be. So those are our big takeaways from this. What do you think about the advice these therapists gave and our counter advice? If you've gotten terrible advice from a therapist, let us know in the comments below, and we'll see what we can do to patch things up. Until next time, folks, keep shining. We need your light.